The holidays are here, and at the Live Faith First podcast, we want to give you the essential guide for navigating holiday parties. And so we have Amberly Neese on this episode. She is an author and a comedian. What better way to navigate holiday parties than with somebody with jokes, right? Here's the thing. Holiday parties, you may love them or you are already dreading them because that person is going to be there that you've avoided for the last 12 months. And they're going to show up with all kinds of opinions and you don't want to hear them right now. The truth is that holiday parties don't have to be a drag. There are ways to navigate those and actually build our relationships and maybe have a reset before we head into the next year. So sit down and enjoy this episode of the Live Faith First podcast. It is the holiday season. It is upon us. It's a joyous time. We get family gatherings. We get work parties. We get all kinds. It's a season of giving. Now, before I get to that, I can change my tone a little bit and use those same words. And you're like, oh my gosh, it's the holiday season and giving. It's like I'm giving away my checkbook. And really, is this about Jesus? Because it seems like commercialization. So we have Amberly Neese with us today, and she's going to solve all of our holiday problems. Amberly, are you ready for this?
Have you ever heard of that whole thing? Undersell, over deliver, the opposite, right? Don't say that. However, I have had my fair share of holiday food. I am excited about these holidays, and I do know that there might be some things that we need to navigate together. So I am willing to go on the journey.
Awesome. Let's do this.
Yeah.
Maybe we can at least give somebody one little tip today. How about underselling it, right? Like one little something.
One little kernel.
I love it. Now, before we get into that, Amberly, would you give us a story of your life? Short, cliff notes of your life. Where were you born? Where were you raised? How'd you get to where you are today?
Yeah. Air Force brat, born in San Angelo, Texas, on the base there. My dad was a translator for the Air Force, spoke Thai and Chinese. Left because his job was not safe for us to reside in any of the places that he was doing the translating. So my mom and I, forged our way until I was 4, and then my sister joined. Did not grow up in a Christian home. My dad was a motivational speaker for the New Age movement later in his life. My mom was a kind of, I would say, cultural Catholic. Nobody told her about relationship. It was all about, pray the rosary. But no real relationship. And so when I became a believer at 10, it shook everybody's fruit basket up in a big way. And when I got really serious and felt a call to ministry later in my teens, literally it was like my family was like, I don't even speak your language. My dad was a translator and he was like, I don't speak this language. It was so bizarre. Went to Bible college, was not looking for my MRS, but by the grace of God, found this really cute guy. We just celebrated 32 years of marriage. We have 2 adult children that we're crazy about. Our daughter is a performer at Dollywood, so you can imagine all the joy that brings. Our son is studying to be a patent lawyer, which is so unlike the rest of us right brainies. And we have a sweet life. We love one another. I love to hike. I love Star Wars. I love Star Trek. I'm that weird. I am that deep in the geek. And I teach at 2 universities, Grand Canyon University, and I teach full-time at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, where I teach communications. Is that enough?
Wow. That's good. No, that is amazing. And lots of things I'd love to comment on, but yes, a patent lawyer and a performer at Dollywood, like that doesn't seem like the same genetic pool, but God does amazing things.
No, I'm with you. And when I asked my son, I'm like, really, a patent lawyer? He was like, Mom, it's like the marriage of engineering and law. Can you think of anything more exciting? And I'm like, dental work? I don't know. That doesn't sound exciting to me. But he's a genius. So I'm just going to let him do his thing and take care of his mama. That's what I know. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And for everybody who has a patent, we appreciate patent lawyers. I don't have a patent, but if I did, I would appreciate the patent lawyers. We need them in this world. We need them. So, okay, we're going to talk about holidays today. So before we kind of move into some of the challenges that come along with the holiday season. What is your favorite thing about the holidays? Is there a food? Is there an event? Is it the whole thing? What is it about between Thanksgiving and New Year's that like you look forward to, if there's something?
Tons of things, actually. So interestingly enough, not a huge Thanksgiving food person. Like, I love me some food and I love to cook, but only in the last couple of years have I felt the freedom to break free from the bondage of tradition and thought outside of the box. And now it's gotten really fun. We have a great time. But one of my favorite things actually is, we do love the holidays, super love it. But we live in a place in the mountains of Arizona called Prescott, and it's called Arizona's Christmas City, which I know some Chamber of Commerce person made that up. But what I do know is that there is an event that happens every year in this town on one of the first Fridays, and the entire town is filled with music because somebody died, left a crazy amount of money. His name was Acker, last name was Acker, and he said,
Wow.
"I want music education to continue in this community." And so every single business within a square mile of the center of town, you go in and it's like the junior high harp chorus, and the next one you go into, it's the barbershop quartet, and then the next one you go into, it's Fiddlers for the Savior or whatever. Like, it's just all of every place has music in it, and I cannot tell you how it is such a beautiful reset to me. Yes, the Christmas services we go to are delicious, but there's something to me so beautiful about the community connection that happens, that music does it. It's so delicious. So Ackernite, living where I'm at, is golden sauce. If anybody wants to come visit, I got some extra room. Come on over. It's a hoot.
Awesome. That sounds amazing. And we, like our house, from the day after Thanksgiving, really until New Year's Eve, it's Christmas music 24/7. Like, we just take that, whatever it is, 6-week, 5-week period, and we just destroy ourselves. Everything from Elvis Christmas to, Toby Mac's got a great Christmas album. Like, there's just so much.
Do you have a favorite? Toby Mac is your jam?
I've spent a Christmas or two with Toby Mac, that is for sure. But like the go-tos, we go a little old school, like Elvis Christmas.
Okay.
Like that is like when we're.
Yeah, some of the pagans make the best Christmas albums. I mean, Pentatonics, come on. That is awesome. Barbara Streisand, come on, right?
Yes.
People that don't believe in Jesus somehow fill our hearts and houses. But I was married to a worship pastor. Scott was a worship pastor for lots of years. And you are blessed that it's only that 6-week period. Because when you are in the house of a music pastor, like about June, I'm like, no, leave May alone. Let May be. You can start in June. But oh man, it was always Christmas. So
I've heard of these people that think Christmas music belongs 365, and I don't disagree. I don't agree with that. Right. I don't. It has its place.
We celebrate Jesus all year long in other ways, right, Elliot?
That's it. That is it.
There it is.
So, moving to some of our challenges beyond when we start listening to Christmas music, though that can cause a little bit of tension, I'm sure. We have this trend that's taken place over the last 4, 8, 10 years where we're kind of breaking relationship with friends and loved ones. Sometimes it's around election cycles. Yep. Sometimes I keep seeing these articles that say how kids are not, they're like just silencing their parents. They're not talking to their parents anymore. They're breaking that out. So would you talk a little bit about connection, disconnection? Why is it so important that we have connection with people? And around the holiday season, it becomes a little more sometimes forced, but sometimes needed.
Right. So I'm just going to show you my cards. Here's the deal. The deal is, I truly believe the Lord placed me on the planet to help people find connection because we're so disconnected. And when in January of 2020, this is before we're hoarding toilet paper or complimenting people on how cute their mask is. Before we were doing any of that, 61% of Americans admitted to being lonely. So we have a disconnection problem in America. Yeah. We also compound that with the fact that we live every day on social media and we can unfriend like a boss. They don't even have to know. We can unfriend them, we can unfollow them, and we can do it quietly, right? So there is this disconnect and discontent for the most part. And by the way, I think it's way higher than 61% now that we've gone through all of that. But we unfollow, we unfriend, and it's gotten to a place where we have lost our taste for real connection. So I've often said, like, we don't eat a lot of fast food in our house. Where I'm Italian, we love to cook. That's the deal. But for some, if you do a constant diet, and I'm not judging. It is what it is. If you do a constant diet of fast food, you lose your taste for finer food, like well done, well balanced, organic, whatever. Because you crave what you eat. And I have found that people have just settled for fast food connections, and they've forgotten what it feels like to share their heart and their secrets and their vulnerability with another, and the beauty and the health and the connection that comes from that, the endorphins that come from that. And so yeah, when we face the holidays, for some people, you are right. Some people, it's like, oh my gosh, I can't wait. My people are coming in. We are going to connect. This is going to be so great. And then some people are like, you know what? I'm just going to unfriend my family. I'm going to unfollow my people because they drive me crazy, or we disagree on things. And it's just easier to fast food, disconnect, than sit it out and work a little hard to ultimately stay connected. And everybody wins when we're connected. It really, it really, and it's not just kumbaya. It's real connection. It's real conversation.
Yeah. And I love that concept you give of like losing our taste for that connection. And so it's kind of one of those things that when you taste real food, you're like, oh my goodness, this was really good. Or we have a family gathering, right? And it's like, I really enjoyed that. I can't tell you how many things my wife and I, we love to do things until like the day of, and then you're like, we have to go.
Oh my gosh. I thought we were the only ones. Oh my gosh. Yes. Oh, my feet, like everything gains 20 pounds. It's like heavier to make it to the
Right. But I can tell you, 99% of the time we leave going, that was great. I'm so happy we did that. Like that was so much fun. We enjoyed it. Totally. I mean, there's a 1% that we're like, we could have passed on that.
Yeah.
But for the most part, when we go out and we're with friends and we're connected, like we come back charged. We might be tired from hanging out or a long day, but just emotionally we're charged. So what do we do to foster that kind of connection or strengthen our ability to overcome maybe some of that, like, the last time we argued, I don't want to do that again, but I don't know how to address it. Like, are there things that we can do to foster this kind of connection?
Well, I think the first thing is it's recognizing its importance, recognizing its value, its ROI, which sounds so strategic and so cold. And I don't mean it to be like that, but those who go to the gym, you know what, there is that reckoning where your alarm clock goes off and you say to yourself, okay, I don't want to get up. It's cold. Now that the weather is colder, it's like, I feel so snugly in this bed. I don't know if I want to do this. And so you start talking to yourself like, okay, well, here's what I know. What I know is I feel so good when I'm done with the workout. So get your bones out of bed. Do the thing. Long term, every day that you work out, they say that that's adding a week to your life. And I don't know who they are, but here's the truth. The truth is there are days that I feel like getting out of bed takes a week off of my life. It's hard.
Right.
But when we are entering those kind of conversations, we have to do that same ROI mental thing. This is important. And the truth is, as narcissistic as we can be, how important it is to us. In full disclosure, it's also important to the people at the table. In some cases, we are the gospel that they will read on Thanksgiving Day. And I don't want to sound overly churchy and overly pressured, but it's true. We're the light, we're the salt, we're the fragrance. We're called to be all these things as believers. And we can't light, we can't salt, we can't fragrance if we're not there. Right. No text is going to be able to, make the same connection. So we have to say to ourselves, this is something that's good. It has good ROI, even when it's tough, even when it stinks, even when it exhausts me and frankly, sometimes even breaks my heart. It's worth the ROI. So that's the first thing. It's just recognizing its importance, right?
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is if we go into it saying, I want to learn more today than I teach, because we can put on our pulpit hats sometimes in a situation like that, where we feel like we have to give the quintessential G.K. Chesterton, message on whatever it happens to be. And the truth is, if we go in saying, I'm going to learn more than I teach, I'm going to ask more questions than I answer, I'm going to seek to understand rather than to be understood, I think we're already on the 60-yard line, right? We're already almost home, I think. So recognize the need, and then recognize how best to make those things, I think, really is the good start. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, that is, first off, very good job asking me a question. I love that.
Yeah, I seek to understand, not to be understood. So
right, so good. I love it. No, I was getting ready just to affirm that, because really, when our brains switch from this teacher mode to investigator mode, I mean, it is a literal switch where when we're teacher, the emotions are different because I am imparting knowledge to you.
Right.
And how could you, one, dare disagree with me because I've thought this through and I'm right.
Right.
And secondly, why would you even comment on this? Because it's clearly the best teaching that there is on whatever subject it is. It doesn't matter if we're talking about how to clean your car or how to cook a meal or something more significant than that. But when we go in with that investigator mode of, I'm just going to try to ask good questions, find out. We have grandkids. What have my grandkids been up to? What are they interested in? What music are they listening to? What shows have they been, like all those types of things. They want to talk about that stuff. They're not going to ask us the questions. So if we get them started, I mean, you learn so much. And then when you follow up later with, oh my gosh, how was the show? Or, hey, has somebody come out with new music? Or, hey, you're interested in this. I just saw this. Now you're actually building relationships after the dinner, right? It's the next week, it's the next month. And now you're like kind of taking this and continuing it on through the year.
Yes. And then when you want to have a conversation about something about which you disagree, then you actually have ground to stand on. Because otherwise you're just teaching to them instead of speaking to their heart. So you asked for a tidbit. I'm going to give you my 2 favorite questions to ask at a holiday. For somebody I do not know, never met before. Hi, I'm Amberly. Elliot, nice to meet you. I asked the question, okay, so what do I need to know about you? And often what I get is, well, what do you want to know? And I'm like, nope, that's not what I ask. I ask, what do I need to know? And I am telling you, it is you think about that. It is such a litmus test of what people care about, what they're passionate about, what they feel best about, because nobody's going to say my back hurts and my kids are out of control. They often say, I just did this cool thing. I just went on this trip or whatever. And you get this wonderful insight to their soul. So that's my favorite with strangers.
I love that.
Second one is my favorite with people that I just maybe haven't seen in a while is, okay, tell me something good. And again, they get like, well, what part do you? I'm like, no, just tell me something good. Like, what's going on that you feel like this is it? This is in the W category.
Yeah.
And again, you see what's important to them. For you, it might be, I got time with my grandkids, and they are so much cuter than your grandkids, which you can say now because I don't have grandkids. But I'm just saying, you get to see what's made somebody's heart beat, right?
Yeah.
And what's cool is all of those have this wonderful opportunity for you to say, oh my gosh, I so love how passionate you are about this. Right. I so appreciate that. So again, if a conversation comes up later on that you don't necessarily agree on things, you've already put marbles in their emotional and spiritual jar.
Yeah.
So
I love that.
He gets me. He understands me. He sees me.
Yeah. Cares about me. Right.
Totally,
yeah.
Totally,
absolutely.
Totally. So if you're listening, you can just turn it off now because you got your tidbits and off you go. Or you can more, right?
Or who knew? Right. There might be another nugget out there. Right. So we're only into the first couple of minutes of this podcast, really. We're just beginning this thing. Well, I love that because there's so many great follow-up questions to that too. Because as soon as you hear about, oh, I went on this trip. Oh my goodness, did you have any good food? Like, tell me about the cuisine there, or
Yeah,
what was your activities? And so,
totally.
even if you choose to not then turn it around to what you've been up to,
Right.
there are so many great follow-ups, and you could say, oh my goodness, I went there too. What did you love about it? I love this. And now again,
Yes.
you have opportunity to, not to make it about you,
Yes.
but to continue the conversation.
Yes.
So
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you. If it's between you and me, I'm flabbergasted at how few people ask a question back.
Hmm.
But if I'm going in to understand and not be understood, then I'm okay with that. Right?
Yeah.
It's not about
Right.
me.
Right.
And it's usually a heart check if I'm like, wow, nobody asked me any follow-up questions. And I think, oh, wow, narcissist party of one, please, your table's ready. I mean, it's like a really good indicator that I didn't go in with the right heart. So,
Right.
so yeah, I think you're totally right. It is ripe for follow-up questions and connection. And I've never been to Panama City. I don't even know where Panama City is. Tell me more about that.
Right.
And tell me more is glorious. Tell me more is so fabulous. So,
Yes.
all right. So
Simple,
broken
few words.
ice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. I love it. I'll be honest with you. One of the things that I can't stand is when somebody asks me more questions than I ask. There's one or two people who every time I see them, they start with a question like, tell me about, and they're in deep. And then we're always in this moment where like, there's something about to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So, 3 minutes in, whatever the meeting starts or whatever it is. And I'm like, I didn't even ask them a question. Like, it actually annoys me. Like, this isn't right. Next time they ask me a question, I'm going to stop them and I'm going to be like, look, you ask all the questions. It's my turn to ask you a question. Because there are times where I try to be aware of asking questions.
Yeah.
And then when you see somebody who's great at it,
Yeah.
you're like, first off, I want to appreciate that. So thank you for asking good questions. But then like, man, it just became about me. And even though I love talking about me,
Right.
it shouldn't always be about me.
So two things, Elliot, that I just want to say, I so appreciate the fact that you're self-aware about it. And I think it's awesome. I am a question asker. I love when someone says, okay, so this conversation was all about me. And I so appreciate that. But you know what the truth is? I am so interested in who you are. So next time, we're just going to reverse the roles. So that's great, which I think is great.
Yeah.
The other thing is, my last Bible study that I wrote is called Untangling Faith, and it's all about the questions of Jesus. And here's the deal. I went to Bible college. I have a master's degree from Bible college.
Yeah.
I never put together, shame on me, all the times I've read the Bible, never put together that Jesus asks over 300 questions in the Bible, and he really flat out answers like 3. So, which is so interesting. So the whole, like, what would Jesus do? Well, the answer is probably ask a question, because that's what he would do. He wouldn't say, you want to get well. He would say, do you want to get well?
Mm-hmm.
He asked all of these delicious, delightful questions. Why? Because questions are heart openers. They just are. Yeah. And so yeah, stay curious, my friend. My friend Mark Fisher says, curiosity may kill the cat, but it fuels the lion. And so that's the deal. Ask the questions and see what God does. I mean, see how he blesses just our willingness to stay open to learning new things. So good on you for being aware.
I love it. All right. I'm going to switch gears slightly because sometimes we do show up to these gatherings and there's some degree of toxic person there. Now, this is it happened in our own life where we kind of put like, hey, these are some parameters we're going to have when we have to go to a place where that person is there. And so this is not a freedom for us to just go, oh, forget about yourself, just go. Yeah. On the other hand, I think there needs to be some kind of like, well, how do we put up with this? Like, how do we navigate through this versus just like abandoning the whole thing? If we're going to talk about belonging, if we're going to talk about connection. So what do we do with toxic people let's just call it a family gathering, at a Christmas gathering? We're not going to go generally in our lives, but when you're going to see somebody who they're going to bring something to the table, how do you navigate some of that stuff?
Well, if you're hosting, you have the advantage of setting the tone, which is, I'm so excited, you guys. This is a follow-up. So excited that everybody's going to be there on Thursday night. Make sure if you have any questions about what you're supposed to bring, just let me know. I'm really looking forward to conversations that are deep and kind and loving, but not divisive. Something along those lines. Because then if somebody starts, you're like, hey, Uncle Bert, gosh, we know we all are totally aware you're super passionate about this, but this is a time, I've made it clear. I just wanted this to be about people who love each other and connection. So if you set good parameters ahead of time, it sounds a little overbearing, but the truth is clarity is kind. You're really clear. This is what we're expecting. The other thing is, there was something that somebody taught me when our kids were little that I have 100% employed as an adult and as a professor and as a human being who's trying to navigate the world. And it's this: the person would say, I say to my kids, oh, I love you too much to let you continue that behavior. Isn't that a brilliant way to say, I'm shutting you down in the name of all that's holy, and I love you too much to let you continue it? But if you lead with love, hey, Uncle Bert, it is, you're right. It's a really sticky situation right now in our politics world. But I love you too much. We have so little time together. I love you too much to let this conversation continue. I want this to be a great day. I just want us to focus on what we have in common, and let's leave politics behind. I mean, again, I'm not sure anybody wins when there is that kind of discord at a party. I don't think anybody who's bringing up the conversation wins, because they watch as everybody else finds something else to do, eat more food, walk away.
Right.
But, again, sometimes people feel a need to do that because they feel disconnected in their world. So they've been listening to their political radio, and they get to Thanksgiving and they're so lonely, and they're like, oh, my people, I can connect with them. And now they're going to just spew what they've been marinating in all this time. In full disclosure, they just may be terribly lonely. They may feel so disconnected and irrelevant that this is their only place. And so if we go into it with eyes of empathy and we're like, man, he may be on the struggle bus, Uncle Bert, I love you too much to let this conversation continue. We have like 17 minutes every year at this table. And I want the 17 minutes to be about stuff that's great, that's going on that's really great in your life. That's really what I want to focus on. Right.
Yeah.
So
no, I love that. And I want to talk about this a little bit more, but term that I've heard, appreciate, is that idea of a compassionate imagination. And so how do we have a compassionate imagination for Uncle Bert, right? Who, let's just put ourselves in his shoes, I mean, and you and I can create a scenario around Uncle Bert that says it's a lonely person who's gotten caught up in his news feed, and he actually doesn't have much else to talk about. It's all he thinks about. He's afraid of the world that's about to happen, or he's, and we just need to, like, in our minds, put him in the best light. And I think one of the challenges of what you've already said earlier is that we get so used to our social media unfriending thing that we would rather just say, let me just unfriend Uncle Bert and not show up for the party. Let me just unfriend Uncle Bert and I'm going to leave. Let me unfriend Uncle Bert. I'm not going to be kind enough to give him some insight into reading the room, because Uncle Bert is not reading the room. Totally. He's not noticing people that are walking away and finding their snacks again, or cleaning the kitchen all of a sudden, because everybody wants to clean the kitchen after a holiday meal. Like, that's the first thing I'm looking to do. Yeah. So in fact, if you're reading the room and you see a whole bunch of people who aren't laughing in the kitchen, it might be because of something you're talking about. All right. So, and so, being aware, and I'm going to encourage y'all, show up. Now, there's a level of toxicity that's inappropriate. So if we're getting to that level, that's something different. But for kind of our standard everyday, I'm annoyed by that conversation, it's not going to get us anywhere. I love that idea of being clear. Now, that is a bit tough for the introvert or the person who just doesn't want to. They would much rather walk away than be kind to Uncle Bert and say, or they're not capable of saying it kindly. And I think that's the other challenge, is that sometimes they're just, your emotions are getting the better of you. And so even to try to say, I got to shut this down, it can be tough. So,
by the way, I know I'm super extroverted. I mean, honestly, An extrovert's extrovert. I have zero introvert in me. It's actually stressful to me to be by myself for long periods of time. When I speak at retreats or whatever, I am that person. They're like, you were just so great. You came out of your room. You really connected with people. And I'm like, oh, I wasn't doing it for them. It's because mama needs some connection. But be clear, just because I'm bold does not mean that it's easy for me to say to Uncle Bert, dude, I love you too much to let this conversation continue. It's just as difficult. I can just say it with a louder volume.
Yeah.
But it's never going to be it's never going to get better for Uncle Bert if we all just unfollow and unfriend and do the dishes. It's never going to be better. So if we continue to create an atmosphere, and again, sometimes it's not our atmosphere to create, but if we create as much as we can a culture around us that what we do, and it's not that we can't have hard conversations. It's not that I don't dislike talking about some things that are political. Had a great opportunity last night to meet. He did a presentation. A guy from the Babylon Bee, which is like a political satire thing. He's hilarious, so brilliant. You talk about being willing to talk about hard conversations and laugh at ourselves and the beauty that brings. It's not that truth isn't spoken, but the truth of Uncle Bert is if we continue, if every time we get together, we're like, love you too much. This cannot continue. But once you've done that, if you want to talk about it in another context, you can do that. But it's just, there's just no need for it. Again, nobody wins in that situation. Not Uncle Bert, not us.
Yeah. And we'll move on to another question, but I love that you start with Uncle Bert. I love you too much.
I love you too.
Like if we started all of our confrontational statements, and again, we don't have to be confrontational in our tone and so on, but confrontational in that I'm addressing something that's happening in front of us right now.
Right.
If I started with, I love you too much for you to continue.
Totally.
You are, whatever. And then you can kind of, or here's how I'm feeling, or here's how the room is feeling. So why don't we switch over to a subject that, whatever.
So can I share with you kind of a new thing that I started recently teaching to my students when you do have that conversation when Uncle Bert just will not shut it down, downtown, around?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So I call it taking it slow. Okay. So you and I are in conversation. I don't even have an Uncle Bert. Poor Uncle Bert. There are Berts out there. You're awesome. We're not Karen.
I did have a great Uncle Bert, and Uncle Bert lived in Hawaii, had a boat, took us out. I know, it was amazing. I only went to Hawaii once while he was there and alive, but like he'd take us out on his boat. And anyway,
Brilliant.
I do have an Uncle Bert.
There you go.
But
so
he's long gone.
Berts were to engage in this kind of thing. So we take it slow. SLOW. S is to state in your own words. So what I do is, what I hear from you, Uncle Bert, is this is how you feel about this particular thing, right? So it means he, on some level, his brain is saying, oh, she's listening to my conversation. She's hearing what I'm saying. So state it in your own words. The L is to list similarities. You know what? I'm also passionate about that thing. And what I think is interesting is then even though I'm on the other side of the political spectrum, here are the things that we have in common. Like this is how these are the connective tissues, which I think is interesting. Again, it says to Uncle Bert, she's listening enough or he's listening enough to make these connective tissue links. The O is to observe positives and show gratitude. Wow. Thank you so much for giving me this perspective. I really appreciate the time, which I think is really great. And I do think I know more now about fracking than I ever did before, or whatever the thing is, right? You show appreciation and you observe the positive parts, because it's really easy for our brain to go, will this person ever stop prattling on and on about whatever it happens to be? And then the W is to work to be a peacemaker. And again, I am not just for kumbaya and let's just not talk about it. I'm not talking about not having the conversations. I'm talking about both holding on to our convictions and holding on to those relationships that God has placed in our path. So you work to be light. You work to be the positive. You work to be. So when that person leaves, they were like, wow, I really feel like that was a really great thing. My sister taught me this thing where she always says, you may be right. So I have a person in my family and he says stuff that makes my hair fall out in clumps. Like he drives me crazonk. And
Yeah.
I have to tell you, that has saved my bacon. I literally am like, you may be right. In my head, I'm like, you're the village idiot. There is no way that you are right. It is not happening. It is not on. You've lost your marbles. But my face says, you may be right.
You
By
might
the
be
way,
right.
I don't lose any ground when that happens.
Right.
I don't lose any ground.
Yeah.
And it oftentimes it's done. Now we're done with that conversation. Now we can move on to pass the turkey and and all the things. But, so that's the slow method. That's something I'm teaching my students because it is a reality that we live in a time where people feel empowered to shove it down other people's throats. And I just haven't seen a lot of converts, not politically, not spiritually, when somebody is a shover.
Right. No, that's absolutely it. I saw a stat recently that 60+% of people would be happy to engage in a political conversation if they were listened to respectfully.
I love that.
Did you hear that? They weren't saying if I were taught to rudely or taught to respectively. I think if somebody was just being heard and being heard in a respectful way, they'd be happy to engage in that conversation. But if it's going to turn into something other than that, then I'm out. And so
I'd love for you to share that research with me offline, because of course that totally supports my slow method with my students.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's great. I was given an incredible gift in my parents, and I'll tell you why. My dad graduated from Berkeley in the late 60s with a political science degree. Wicked smart. That's really the gene pool that my son was swimming in full disclosure. It just recessed right over me, like just skipped an entire generation, right? Wicked smart. And I will tell you, my dad gave me the gift. We would sit, I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional. We'd sit around the table and he would say, why do you believe that? Why do you think that? It didn't matter. I would say, I was young and I'd be like, well, I think this thing. And he would say, well, why do you feel that way? And he would get to the point that he would say, I'm so glad we had this conversation. Thank you for giving me that perspective. Of course, I'm in 6th grade. I'm not offering any perspective for him that he hasn't already thought through. But he was respectful, and he taught me to listen when it was his turn. And I thought everybody grew up in that home. I thought everybody had that kind of gift where you totally are not on the same page. And yet you could love each other really well outside of that. And so again, it's one of the things that I feel like the Lord has put me on the planet to do, including the parents he gave me and the gifts that they taught me inadvertently or, outright. So yeah, that's what I would love. I would love for people to feel listened to. I think that is so profound that you would share that. Yeah. I just want to be heard.
Yeah. Just listen to me.
Yeah.
We're good. We can move on from here, and we don't have to. And anyway, I am going to move on from this because I think there's a bunch more stuff we could dig into, but I want to talk a little bit about forgiveness here before I'm just going to give you the teaser before our Star Wars question comes up, because
okay. All right.
you are apparently, and I can't tell you how many times I have seen every episode. I mean, it's just I love it. Anyway, before we get into Star Wars.
Yes.
How does forgiveness play into all of this? Last year, Uncle Bert, poor Uncle Bert's getting beat up on, and his wife, Aunt Betty.
Betty.
Bert and Betty.
That's cute. Okay, go ahead.
They brought it last year, and left a little disgruntled, or maybe you left a little frustrated, or, maybe it was 2016, and that it happened, or 2020 that it happened. But with all that said, how does forgiveness work into going back to that holiday party and just being like, all right, new tactic, forgiveness for Uncle Bert and Aunt Betty, not holding that against them. Let's move forward. So tell me a little bit about forgiveness and how that plays into all this.
I'm so glad you gave me this nice little softball question. Thank you so much for, So in full disclosure, I'm a word nerd, and I think it's so brilliant that the Lord would empower our linguists to use the word forgiveness, because it literally has give in the word. And so rarely it's not for receiveness, it's for forgiveness, right? So it is literally something that we are giving to somebody else. And oftentimes undeserved gift, but we choose to give it. And if you struggle to give it, I just want to write you and I a reality check that God does not repay us as our sins deserve. He doesn't repay us as our sins deserve. He's in the business of forgiveness. So lest we get too high and mighty for Uncle Bert, we need to remember that he pulled us out of a slimy pit. He put our feet on a rock, right? He calls us workmanship. He plans in advance for us to do all these good works. Like, God is this beautiful initiator of grace, and then has the audacity to ask us to do the same. So I would say, pray for Uncle Bert, not just on your way to the Thanksgiving thing, but pray for Uncle Bert on the regular. Put a reminder on your Google. If he really makes your teeth itch, by all means, spend some time. If you're wasting any energy on Uncle Bert and thinking about Uncle Bert, by all means, spend some of that energy and just lift him to the Lord, because clearly he's feeling disconnected. Clearly he's on the struggle bus. Yeah. And we can be kind and we can extend grace, but only God can do the healing. So that's the first one. And that's even if Uncle Bert doesn't know Jesus. So I think that's a big deal. Pray for them. Recognize our own need for forgiveness in certain areas. I think it's so funny. Our son went through a period of time that he was very politically active. And we wanted to support that, even if we weren't necessarily on the same page. Again, generational. Even if we're not on the same page, we can do whatever. And he was saying, oh, so-and-so is the worst. And I was saying, how much time have you spent praying for that so-and-so? And he was like, but he doesn't know. And I'm like, no, wait. Right. How much time have you spent wishing the best for him? Because, Romans is really clear that all authority on heaven and earth has been, put there by God. So he's teaching us something in this. And so my question is, how much time have you done whatever? And he was like, you're right. Yes. I've spent no time. And I will tell you, the Lord softens our heart when we go before him. If we're really honest, saying, man, Uncle Bert makes me crazy, Lord. I know you know this. So he 100% does that. And the other thing is, again, if we go into it with a posture of to be understood and not to understand, right, oftentimes we get these glimpses of what is going to spark the forgiveness in the first place. If we see him as the broken person that he is, then it's amazing. It's like scarlet colored glasses. We could just start seeing him how Jesus sees him. And I don't mean to over spiritualize it, but it is a spiritual exercise to forgive. It is a spiritual exercise, especially when somebody doesn't want your forgiveness, doesn't feel like they deserve your forgiveness. It's spiritual. It's a battle. And so we can armor up and choose to forgive, or we can sit and marinate in our own, dissatisfaction and high holiness and miss out on the blessing that is Uncle Bert.
Yeah. No, I think that's so good. So many great pieces there. And even for the person that, doesn't follow Christianity, forgiveness is still such a huge part of really emotionally surviving this world, because forgiveness it's sulfuric acid to our souls. It's stuff where we're so worried about that person and what they did to us. And my wife always says this. She's like, that person ain't thinking about you. They don't even care about you. You're all worried about what Uncle Bert did last Christmas. And first off, he didn't even know he did anything.
Right.
First off. Secondly, if he does know that he did something, he doesn't care. So you're actually the one hurting yourself by focusing on, and I think God is so brilliant in that he's able to give us practices that, in my mind, go beyond whether or not you have faith in him, because actually thinking positive thoughts about Uncle Bert, we call it prayer, right? We call it prayer and saying, Lord, I forgive. Would you forgive? I forgive. Help me forgive. I know Uncle Bert's hurt, whatever that is, but that same process of, you know what, today I'm going to choose to think a positive thought about Uncle Bert. Uncle Bert grew up with blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
And he can't help himself, whether I think it's right or wrong. And even that kind of thinking starts to erode away that unforgiveness that we carry around with us
Yeah.
because we're starting to train our brains a little bit just to think a little bit differently about Uncle Bert. So, this is a cross our society, cross the world, forgiveness or unforgiveness is a problem that just we deal with. And if we talked about earlier, like, hey, it's good for you to go to the gym. It's good for you to have connection. You know what else is good? To forgive people and not hold grudges, because it's killing you on the inside.
Yes,
if you
totally.
wonder why you.
Yes. I'm so glad. Thank you for bringing that perspective. You are totally right. I mean, a lack of forgiveness is also prevalent in our society. And so if we can practice, and it is literally going back to the gym, like a muscle, that forgiveness muscle, it really, all it does is strengthen us, is to continue that process. And, and again, when we're really honest, it's probably something about Uncle Bert that we don't like about ourselves that mostly plugs us in. So
Come on, don't make it personal. Come on.
Oh, sorry.
That's not right.
Sorry.
Come on.
But that's a personal nugget. But yeah, it's usually the thing that it's like, he is so stuck in his ways and he's so fervent about whatever, and he doesn't see anybody else's ways. I wish he could see it my way. Oh wait.
Right. This podcast is not about introspection. Come on, Amberly. This is not about introspection, okay? This is about other people.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, got it.
And the trouble they're causing us. Please don't make this about me refining myself. That is not what this is about. But
got it.
No, you're absolutely right? I mean, and we find that so often where you're like, man, their opinions might be different, but the way they're going about expressing it, super familiar. And I just, True. And we're not obligated to continue on what somebody else did, right? I mean, I think sometimes we think, well, that's all I learned. And I hear that, man, that's all I ever saw growing up. Okay. But there is a path forward where you could learn a new way to do it. You could learn a new tactic, a new opinion, whatever. So
there's that super gross Bible verse that says, as a dog returns to its vomit, so a man returns to his folly. I mean, the truth is, we have a dog and she eats some gnarly things. That doesn't make it right. It doesn't mean there isn't a better way. We try to offer her better ways, and sometimes she takes it and sometimes she doesn't. Yeah. But to say, well, it was what I was taught. It's what I've always done. Well, you know what? If you're a vomit person, you do you, boo. But the truth is, there is something better. There is a freer way to live, a wiser way to live, a lighter way to live, for sure. So all we can do is the best we can do.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's nerd out about Star Wars for a minute here.
Bring it.
Which character do you most relate to? Like, if you could be one character in Star Wars, who would you want to be? And let's not go, it doesn't have to be gender specific. It doesn't have to be like, oh, I'm female, so it has to be a female star. Like, it can, we're going for any character out there.
So I would say my favorite character is Ahsoka. I love me some Ahsoka.
Come on now.
Fantastic. I love what they've done with her character arc in some of the later work, so that's good. I'm going to say Obi-Wan. So Obi-Wan is a teacher for sure. Like he was taught. It was modeled to him. He did the best he could. So the teacher in me 100% can do that. But also, he is a person of passion. I mean, we find, again, I'm digging deep in the geek. We find that he was confronted with a relationship that he could have pursued and broken the Jedi code. But it's not like he was without the capacity. He absolutely had the capacity, but he tried to continue to choose what was right. And I think on some levels, he didn't necessarily thrive because he just continued to choose what he thought was the right thing. And I love me some Obi-Wan. Like I mean, the scene where he holds Qui-Gon Jinn, every time I know what's coming. dun, 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 and every time I'm like, it's coming. I'm gonna cry like a
That's
stinking baby every
yeah,
time. So
yeah,
I would say his fervor, his commitment, his passion, his. I mean, when he says, essentially, Anakin, don't make me make this decision. I have the high ground. Don't
right,
do this. You were my brother.
right,
I 100% can relate to that. I 100% have that relational connection where we don't necessarily see that in the other Jedi's.
yeah,
It was more transactional, seemingly more transactional with them,
yeah,
but with
yeah,
him, it was personal, and
yeah,
that's me
yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
How about you?
I love that. I love that. Well, you're giving me chills just talking about Obi-Wan. So there's a
Right?
part of me that, I'm
Dun,
like,
dun,
I
dun,
want to
dun,
choose
dun, dun, dun.
Obi-Wan. I want to
Dual
choose Rey.
face. Yes.
Um, for me, it feels like a bit of a cop out, but I love Luke. I love Luke Skywalker. I think just kind of coming from nothing, not really knowing what his origins were, and then finding out, and then just putting in the work to train, but then following his heart to be like, no, I need to go protect my people. Return of the Jedi. Like I gotta go back. I gotta confront
Yes.
this evil, my dad. I can convert him. I can bring him over to this side. And
Yes.
again, his passion for just making a difference, not knowing he didn't belong where he was too. I mean, that's an interesting thing. When you see him first, right, he knew he didn't belong there being a moisture farmer. Like this is not who I am. I'm a pilot.
I had to go to
Like,
Tashi Station. Come on.
right. Yeah, right. Right. And anyway,
You and
and
I
what's the name?
I mean,
Yeah.
I think we didn't talk about age, but I think I'm older than you are. But I mean, he really was our insight into that story. Like
Yes.
he was the
Yes.
character to which we could most relate so that we could go on this journey, the hero's
Yes.
journey, as it were. And so I
Absolutely.
can 100%
Absolutely.
why somebody would say Luke. But
Yeah.
um that's not true. He did have some not so great moments as well, but yeah,
He did well, and he gave into his fears got the best of the time. I think that was the other thing, is that you could see his faults. I mean, there's almost unimaginable when he became a Jedi. Like, how'd you become a Jedi with just a little bit of training with Yoda? Like that didn't, and I'm not a comics book guy, so maybe they filled in that blank somewhere, but like, it was almost, but his fears and not giving into them. Like, I don't know, there were so many pieces where you connected to it. And then I'll just throw out one, because I think everybody wanted to be Han Solo. Like, you kind of want to be the scoundrel. You kind of want to be the guy who pretends like he doesn't care, but he really cares. And the one that shows up when,
middle. Yeah, he's hard exterior but squishy middle. Yes, 100%.
right, right. But I would have to go. I'd have to choose Luke. So, well, that's all for today's episode. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Live Faith First podcast, this essential guide to holiday gatherings. Here's the thing. The truth is that the holidays are going to come and go. Your relationships that you build during this season, those are going to last a long time. And you are going to have people around you that don't think like you. They don't believe like you. They don't even act like you. And you know what? That's okay. You might find it abhorrent and terrible, but the truth is use this season to find out a little bit more about why people think and believe the way they do. And you don't have to agree with them all the time, but that doesn't mean you have to break relationship either. All right, everybody, today let's go live faith first.